Hi everybody, my name is Ross, this is Mark, you're listening to the A Life in Dublin podcast. Today we were lucky enough to talk to Felipe, who runs the Boulder podcast here in Dublin.
Great guy. See, he's quite famous within the Brazilian community, so it's a bit of a privilege for us to be able to interview him. Worth a listen. He's got some interesting stories, sad stories, particularly in relation to Tiago, I can't remember, Cortez I think his name, who was killed, and some other kind of interesting, funny and just cool stories of the Brazilian community in Dublin. So check it out. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah.
See you in the next one, guys.
So you actually... So this is the... Straight in, my friend.
Yeah. There's no stopping.
No, but just so that I understand it, so the studio that you have it's in Portobello but shared.
Yeah. Well, I share because there's an office upstairs, so downstairs is the studio.
Okay. Yeah. And the office is like you work there and then use the studio downstairs?
No, it's a friend of mine. He has an office there, so we rent it together. But it's his office upstairs and my studio downstairs.
Okay, brilliant.
And of course, if someone is recording there, I tell him, because normally we use it in the evening, so normally there's no noise or anything. But if someone is recording there in the afternoon, I just ask him not to be there, not to do any noise, or,
Brilliant.
But it's okay. Like, I don't have, the studio is not occupied 24/7, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But if I find people to rent all the time, I will maybe have to move someplace else.
Okay. Well, first of all, Felipe, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No
You've
worries.
come quite a way on a Sunday morning, so it's
okay.
good. It's good to see that you're not hungover as well. I can see that. I can see that you weren't out last night. Or if you were, then you can hide it very well.
No, I were home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, like you said before we started, your kind of when you came and your journey, but just so people who are listening understand, when did you actually come to Dublin?
Yeah, my first time here was in 2011.
Okay.
I never heard of Dublin before. I mean, I heard about Ireland once, many years ago. I lived in Germany for a while because my mom lived there, and I had some friendships there. And at some point, one girl I met there, she said, "Oh, I stopped. I'm going to leave Munich, and I'm going to Dublin, Ireland." I said, "Ireland? What is that?" The first image in my head was like a mountain and a sheep.
Yeah, okay. Kind of the typical, the stereotypical image when you think of Ireland.
Nailed it.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
Of course, it's not that, but it's like they said the word Ireland. That's what came to my head. And then, when I came here years later, of course, it was completely different. What I saw the city, and I saw the spire, and then the lights at night. I came in at night, and everything was very different. But yeah, so my first time was 2011. I came to study here to do a master's degree after my college in Brazil at this time. Yeah.
And which university did you do your master's in?
Griffith College.
Griffith College.
Yeah.
South Circular Road.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what did you do your master's in?
Digital media. So
Perfect.
what I do now, what I work now.
And what got you? You have your podcast now, the Boulder podcast. But what were you doing before that made you want to get into digital?
I always liked video and video production, especially, and editing. And when I was in Brazil, my college is in advertising, communications and advertising. And then there I started, when there was some assignment to do, I started doing videos to present this assignment. So I started studying Premiere and all these softwares. And then a friend of mine started working in a TV station there. So I was asking, I was very curious about this and asking a lot of tips about it. And after I finished college, I was looking for a place to go in Europe, to do a master's degree. So I was researching everything. And the course that I fell in love with was this one, from everything I saw.
Yeah.
And also I had a girlfriend at the time who wanted to study English because she didn't know English. And then, everything combined, so we came here.
Okay, brilliant. What I'm curious to know is because you came back in 2011, right? 2011 was the year I finished college that year. And it wasn't a particularly positive time in Ireland. Actually, we were still in a recession. It was very difficult to find work. Majority of Irish young people were emigrating, and you were immigrating. So that it was an interesting kind of change. But now Dublin 2022 is very different to the Dublin, in my opinion, to 2011. I wonder how you have seen the evolution of Dublin since then.
Yeah, in 2011, I remember that before coming here, so the college was kind of paid, and then people were saying, oh, but Europe is in a crisis and stuff, and I was like, yeah, at least they will accept me there, at least it would be easier for me there, but when I came here, I remember seeing, especially in the Dublin 8 area where I studied and I lived nearby, and I started seeing all these shops that were closed. So everything was closed there, and graffiti everywhere and these kind of things. But I think after that, things started changing, and the country grew a lot,
Yeah, I mean, even from my point of view, I think it started to improve maybe from 2012 onwards. But when I came back, so from being away from 2015 to 2019, I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019. COVID has just changed my perception of time.
18, I'd say.
I think it was maybe 18. But there was I noticed a huge difference in Dublin. Because little things, like I remember coming back, one of the first times I came back, and I went to the pub for a pint with my brother. And we sat down at a table, and there was a lot of lads beside us, and they were having, young lads, our age, having dinner and pints in the pub. And I was like, that's not, we didn't do that a few years ago, because either you could afford to go out for a few pints or you could go out for dinner. It wasn't two.
One or the other.
So, for me, there's a massive change. Dublin has, and I hope it stays, and who knows what's going to happen over the next few years, but there's, I think, a big difference in terms of the amount of money that's been around and the amount of money that's been spent.
Yeah, but even people were saying, oh, I remember my father asking me, oh, but is it in a crisis there? I said, yes, but, if you look at the shops here, the streets are full and everything, in the city center especially,
Yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing shops closed in a part of town, but in the other part, in the city center, you always see people shopping and doing everything. So yes, it was a crisis, but it's not a huge crisis, I think.
No, it didn't. There wasn't violence on the streets kind of thing. It wasn't that level of a crisis. I think it was... I think some people got caught. People who maybe bought a house right at a really bad moment where they got almost 100% mortgages, and then next thing they're left with these mortgages which they can't pay. I think those were people... I was lucky. I came out of college. I didn't have anything.
So
assets.
Nothing has changed actually. But so I think some people who had really bought something, who were had long-term loans, I think that's where the problems were.
Yeah, for me, this didn't have
Wasn't
any
an
effect
issue.
as well because I was just trying to understand more who I was at that time.
Yeah.
You know, I was just studying. I remember I was lucky at this time because I got like from my stepfather I had part of tuition paid, you know, in the college. So it was like I was just I wanted to enjoy this experience, you know, like, oh, now I gotta make it work because I had this memory that when I went to Germany after, I don't know, 9 months, I said, I can't stay here, you know, it's too cold, I have no friends. And then I said, okay, I want to go back to Brazil. And this time I was like, no, I gotta make it work, you know, I gotta take this opportunity because it was like a once in a lifetime thing, you know, like that you're able to go abroad to study something that you like, you know. And I really liked the college here, and I really liked video production that, you know, they had this topic there as well.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I gotta enjoy this. And I didn't want to feel guilty, you know, that I didn't take this chance. So my thing was, let me just study and let me do my best to do this college. So I was fortunate enough as well. I didn't have to work at the time, you know. And also, it's like I don't know if you have a lot of Brazilian friends, but now €1 is 5 to 6 reals. At the time, €1 was like 2.5, you know.
Wow.
2 reals 30
The
cents.
inflation has kind of massively gone up at the moment.
Yeah, the crisis in Brazil and, you know, everything, like it deteriorated the value of our money. So at the time it was easier. So, and the rent here was much cheaper.
Yeah.
So like I could get 500 reals from Brazil and pay my rent here.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and 500 reals now doesn't pay anything.
A week
Wow.
maybe.
Yeah.
Not even. So you
That's crazy.
did your masters. You stayed in Ireland, and now you've kind of created a life for yourself where you essentially interview Brazilians living in Ireland, going through a lot of what you've already gone through. And I think it's a great idea because it's such a large population of Brazilians in Ireland and Portuguese speakers. What are the problems that Brazilian people are experiencing that they just either don't have the language capabilities to tell Irish people, or just don't want to talk to Irish people about them, that they're more happy to talk to Brazilian people?
Well, it's a variety of things. I mean, the main problem everyone knows, which is
Rent.
accommodation, rent, and and normally the Brazilians who come here, they come to study English, so they come to learn English, you know, so basically, rent is the first thing, and then for some people, and for some time, it was the violence against the delivery drivers, riders, especially. And then this was, I think, the main thing from 2020 to, 2021, or maybe even the beginning of 2022. But
Before you can you tell, like, I'm sure you've spoken to some, let's say one particular part, it's happened to multiple people, but can you give us a rundown of a story from someone who's experienced something like that?
Well, the main thing was the Tiago Cortes, right? I think his surname is Cortes. If I'm mistaken, maybe I'm sorry, but he got killed by a few people who run over him with a car, and then he was riding a bike, delivering food, and this was the first thing, or not the first thing, but the big thing that happened. The climax. But before, there were small attacks like someone's riding a bike and then they're trying to hit people and knocking them off the bike, that kind of thing. And after that, in 2020 there were a lot of protests, and then there was this big thing, like the clash between delivery drivers and some people. And after that there was the death of the Irish kid as well. And this was horrible as well, and then I mean, after these two horrible things, I think that things calmed down a little bit. I mean, none of this should happen,
of course,
on both sides. And the whole situation is just horrible. And I mean, but from what I interviewed delivery drivers, the main problem, the normal problems were like that, like small attacks here and there. One of the stories that I interviewed was one of the delivery drivers. He was attacked by, he said, 11 people in Finglas, and then he had to go to the hospital by himself. Like a taxi driver, stopped for him. He had to go to the hospital, and then it was so long for them to do something about him, with his face, that he had to fly to Brazil and do a surgery there.
My God.
Yeah. And this was like a big thing as well. He went to the news, but they never caught the guys.
Like that antisocial behaviour, it's rampant both in Ireland and in England. Like I've watched, Vice. They did a documentary essentially on delivery drivers, that it's probably one of the most dangerous jobs at the moment. Like, you either may have money on you, or you have food on you, you have things that people kind of want, and because they're either on a bicycle or a moped.
I don't think they're doing it for money though.
No, but they're doing it for antisocial behaviour.
Yeah.
But that also entices them just to kind of do it as well, because there may be a little bit of some goods out of it if they do it well enough.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mean, they don't have, like, I don't know how much money those guys carry, but if 11 people, like, I can't imagine you're making much money off that.
I mean, one thing that it's weird, but it's like Brazil is much more violent than Ireland. Like when people start sharing stories like that, even I'm here and people say, oh, Ireland is very violent and stuff. No, it's not. You can't compare Ireland with Brazil. But the thing is, the violence in Brazil is not justifiable but understandable.
Okay.
I mean, I can understand one guy who has nothing or barely nothing trying to rob you, and
yes,
I can't justify. I don't think it's right.
Yeah.
And I think this guy should go to jail if he steals an iPhone, or if he steals a car or whatever, But here I don't see any justification, like any explanation. I don't see anything, I mean,
senseless boredom, nearly.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's like that,
Yeah, I actually think, having grown up here and, at times been a victim of that type of thing myself, never to as much of a degree have been attacked by 11 people or anything like that, but you're always going to get something happen to you growing up in Dublin. I think, not being very serious, whether it just be like verbal abuse or sometimes, you might get robbed. We used to walk to the park to go to school. And we got robbed once by lads that were threatening to smash bottles over our heads and stuff like that. So at the time we were like, yeah, take everything I have, which was very little. I think that there's a part of the problem, and this is very, very, like, I'm in a very comfortable position to be able to say this, but part of the problem is the fact that there's an us and there's a them. And this is going back years in the history, right, of maybe what comes from, we'll say, British culture of the class system. And And I think, like, there's all sorts of names that you might call these lads. You might call them little scumbags, snackers, whatever. Whatever you might want to call them, chaps in the UK. And there's this kind of, you're identifying those people as a group, right? Which then limits the amount of possibilities that a person has. Because, you know, like, even if you're applying for a job, maybe you don't want to put down your home address on the job application if you come from a particular area, because you might not be that type of person at all, but it identifies perhaps as being in a particular category. And I think part of the solution is for us to become a more integrated society, where I've often spoke about decategorization on this podcast. I think that's a very let's say soft skills, nice way of putting it. I know probably you also need like better policing, more presence of police on the road. That type of thing is also a solution. So I think you need like a soft and a hard hand to deal with this problem. But at the moment, I don't think anything has actually been done. So
more money into social
services.
Services, social issues, giving people opportunities. It's the same like that they've done with, if you have a CV, you don't have a picture on your CV anymore in Ireland. You don't usually put your gender on. You kind of take away those things that can be screened out. So if, like you said, if it was from a typically disadvantaged area of Dublin, you might be screened out just for having your address there, regardless of if you grew up there or if you're involved in any sort of antisocial behaviour. So I think negating that possibility to be screened out because of things beyond your own control is probably the best way to give more opportunity. But unfortunately, these ingrained ideas might already be in our head, and it's going to be 2-3 generations if there isn't any radical change done in the next 10 years.
But I don't know what the solution is, but what is strange to me is like the guy comes from Brazil, let's say a delivery driver, you know, and then he's working there on a bike in the cold 60 hours a week sometimes, you know, doing whatever he can and, you know, bringing money, paying rent, and like, working. He says off, you know, trying to provide something, or, you know, trying to stay here, trying to pay for his college here, trying to get a better job. And I don't know, we don't see them as poor guys, you know.
It is heartbreaking, and I think more people need to be aware of how difficult that kind of job is. As you said, the transition from being in a hot country to, you know, the weather that we just had a few minutes ago. It's cold, it's raining, it's windy, and then for multiple hours a week.
It's not up to the people who've moved into the country to have to understand the nonsensical violence of the people from that country. You know, it's hard enough, like you said, trying to get used to it, trying to find places, trying to make friends, trying to understand the social structure and the way of life in a country. It's not up to them to be like, oh well, I got attacked because of the social issues in this area. You know, it's not a reasonable thing to expect someone who's just been attacked to get, you know, to think about. It's up to us to really kind of try and enforce some sort of social responsibility upon people, and either that by like putting yourself maybe in a potential dangerous situation. Like if someone, I was walking across the Millennium Bridge in Dublin from north side to south side, and these two little young lads,
snack boxes,
nanas, whatever you want to call them, and they started just harassing this woman on this. They were kind of poking her and pulling her, and kind of, poor woman was probably in her late 50s, early 60s, that kind of thing. Wasn't really sure what the hell was going on, and like, because I was walking by and I wasn't afraid of a bunch of 13-year-olds. There was only 2 of them. You kind of just shout at them and be like, you know, tell them just to F off or get away, or like understand what are they doing, kind of put them in their mind that. But that's only one time in probably my 10 years living in Dublin that I've ever had an opportunity to feel confident enough to insert myself into a situation that might help somebody.
What was their reaction?
They told me to fuck off, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I just told them, essentially, we just shouted at each other, and I just waited with the woman for 2-3 minutes until they were definitely gone, and that she kind of got herself back in. She was shook, like, and she didn't seem like a native of Ireland either, so she was kind of just a little bit like, whoa, what happened there? But you do have to kind of put yourself into that situation. You need to put yourself in a little bit of danger if there is going to be some sort of like, righteous action towards these kind of behaviors.
But not everyone feels comfortable in getting.
Of course, no. I'm 6 foot. I'm 6'3.5", and I look stern as feck. Like, I feel like I have some sort of intimidation tactic that I could employ. If you're 5'5" and have no confidence or anything like that, you're not going to be able to stand up for someone else. You might not be able to stand up for yourself. Like. Yeah.
I think long term, I don't think that's the solution. I think that's good what you did, and being an honourable member of society and stuff like that. But I think, I don't know. I think that it's a difficult fix. There's not just one answer. There's probably multiple answers to the problem. How has the Brazilian community itself within Ireland dealt with all of this? I know there was a lot of support and nice messages and everything were around. Unfortunately, what happened with Tiago and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
did it bring the community closer together?
I think so, but I think we were just trying to, be more careful or to take more care of where we are going and stuff, But like it brought people closer. I think they were. I mean, we organized, not we, but some people organized a crowdfunding to pay for the funeral costs and to send the body. And then, but I think Brazilian people here, they are close. Normally, it's a very caring society, community. We try to take care of each other. Even sometimes we say, even sometimes we say we don't say nice things, not every time, but we try to be always to take care of each other, I think. And I know that in the Brazilian groups people say, don't go to this area is dangerous, and don't do this, don't do that, and we try to strengthen each other, to be, more in a close group, I think. But I don't know if this fact changed something. I think we were always like that,
I imagine so. I always imagined, I used to work as an English teacher. You still do. So I've been in close contact with the Brazilian community really since I started working as a teacher when I was in 2013. So, and actually it's kind of, when you first become a teacher, you remember those people more than the thousands of other Brazilian students I had, but you'll always remember the guys at the very beginning. I think because when you first become a teacher, you're almost more friends with the class, but as you're a teacher for a longer time, so many people come and go that you don't really. You can't go for a pint all the time with every new group of people that come in.
Most Brazilians, as I said, they come to study English, and school. It's funny that school is like no one wants to go to this school.
What? No, I can't believe that.
And we go because it's like the responsibility. I mean, it's because of the visa.
Generally.
Generally,
Of course.
And it's weird that we have to stay there for 15 hours a week?
Something like that. At least 20, really?
15 to 20.
15 to
20, yeah. And man, it's not amazing, to have to go to school. And people, when everyone starts being confident with English, and it starts to be even worse.
Yeah, because you're like, I don't need to be here anymore. Yeah.
And then when they changed this law, okay, so this is one of the, you said, the problems that Brazilians face. Yeah, this law that changed from 8 months, or from 1 year visa to 8 months. Mm-hmm. Now you gotta pay a new school every 8 months. You know, it's really horrible.
Yeah.
You know, people. It's like a money grabbing machine. You know.
Oh, 150 million%.
Absolutely.
So I used to work for a big school here. Then during the pandemic, basically, I set up an online school with a colleague of mine. And at this point, I realized everything behind all of the visa stuff, because I was like, oh yeah, we'd love to be able to offer visas as well in our new school. And I realized how difficult it was to be one of those. And there was not that many other businesses during the pandemic where a group of students were legally obliged to pay for something at a rate that for a service that they weren't receiving. So you were paying for in-person classes a certain amount of hours a week, and then you were paying the same for online classes. I think it was less quantity of hours per week, and it just obviously wasn't the same thing. And maybe some people were delighted they could just stick on Zoom and put on a black screen and just kind of go back to bed.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. I couldn't, they were paying so much money for this service but they were legally obliged to do that.
And instead of, so if the school had 500 places for a student, now magically they have unlimited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they could sell a lot of spaces for the same amount of money.
Yeah, I always think back to whoever was in the room when that decision was made. There was some corrupt handshakes going on there for sure.
Brown envelopes, for sure.
I don't know if it was brown envelopes or
definitely. Well, it has to be. It's not. It's weird to say. I still work at it, but part of my frustration with the industry that I'm in is that we are just being they're kind of getting into groups now, groups of language learners coming over, and you become a glorified, at least with adults and Brazilians, you can kind of talk to them and help them get along with their life, try and solve some life problems, help them if you find out somewhere that might be cheap for rent or a good place for them to possibly meet new friends. That's interesting. But when you get into the industry that we have now, where it's literally groups of students, European students, over for a week, 2 weeks maybe maximum, and you're a glorified babysitter just talking to them in English, and it's rinse repeat, and you're working out weekends for ridiculous hours to be teaching English when none of them are interested. At least for the students who are using the Gen IB, you learn English, you have to kind of go to classes. There is some sort of benefit for them going to it. They hopefully will get better at English, they'll find jobs easier, they have more opportunities in the future. But the industry now is essentially get as many students in and just make as much money as possible. Teachers aren't really being looked after, they're not being provided with enough time to prepare for lessons, they're being run ragged. I would work maybe a 38-hour week of teaching. I get paid for an hour of preparation. Mm-hmm. It's not really good enough. While an actual secondary school teacher will teach something like maximum 28 hours and they get paid the rest in preparation. So it's bad for the students, it's bad for the teachers, it's bad for the actual industry in general, and yet it's continued to do it, and I don't really know why, and I can understand why people who've moved into Ireland for that purpose are frustrated with the whole process. Do you know, I've like I said, I've taught enough Brazilians and to know that they're just there just essentially for the visa.
And I think the rules, they are kind of hypocritical as well, because they say, okay, come to Ireland, you're gonna study, and then you're gonna work 20 hours a week, which everyone knows it's impossible to make a living here if you
and to pay rent.
Yeah, because of course the 20 hours a week will be only for the rent, Then you gotta work the rest to live, to do something, and they make these rules.
Let's be honest though, they know that.
I know they
know that, and they also know that they probably can't say come and study and work 40 to 50 hours a week, because that's almost like inhumane to say that. So it's almost a marketing technique. Yeah, come here, study 20 hours per week. And then you come here and you realize that, but they know that, of course they know that that's not happening.
I think it's a political choice. Yeah. You wouldn't look good if they said, yeah, come here, work 40 hours a week.
Exactly,
and then,
that's what
then people, people who don't, because you guys are in this field, so you understand a little bit about what we go through, but some people will just say, why, a student will work 40 hours a week? No, and then what about the rest of the population, the jobs and stuff? But
the Irish government has no idea. I remember, do you remember there was that scandal of visas being given out and students not attending schools, and there was a lot of English schools closed down. And I remember being there when the government, because the school I was working in at the time offered to be a representative of the industry, and they had no idea. So they were like, okay, you're a school, so you start in September and you finish in June. They're like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's like, okay, so you probably have 1,000 students per year. It's like, no, we have about 25,000 students per year. And they're like, how is that possible? It's like, well, some students come for 2 weeks, some students come for 9 months. It's like a continuous rolling door. The government had zero idea of how the industry works, but yet they're making these decisions. Probably with some kind of representative also in other countries who also have no clue what it's like to be a student and go and live in another country. So
the irony is we're also underrepresented ourselves. It's not like we can't, because we're English language teachers, we can't join a union for teachers because they don't consider us actual teachers. So if we have gripes with the industry, tough luck. It's just you work a lot of the time these schools are just offering 0-hour contracts. Yeah, we'll keep you working, but when there's no work, we don't have to provide you those hours. And what am I going to say? No, I still need to work. And while I love my job, talking to people, learning so much about other cultures, other languages, learning a couple of things, like I love being able to say "suas patatas estás asando," to students who are talking a little bit too much. I'm just like watching. You have that kind of fun and that relationship, and it kind of just, unfortunately, you don't want to leave because you like the students and you like the work, but you also feel like you have to leave, otherwise you're not really looking after your own future. It's not stable enough. You're working maybe every week to week. You're looking at the end of 1 week, what am I doing next week? It's crazy for both teachers and students, and I think that's why we get on so well, because they're screwed and we're screwed, but we screw together, but I don't know.
That's why I'm not in the industry anymore.
True.
Anyway, I'm fascinated also about your journey with the podcast. Would you call it a podcast? Would you call it? You call it the Boulder Podcast. We spoke about how it got started, but how has it evolved? You had the ideas that I'm just going to start having conversations with the community here in Dublin. Did you have big grand ideas of where it's going to go, or it just kind of happened?
No, the thing was, I had a podcast before. I had the Pod Irlanda, so Pod Ireland, let's say. And it was me and a friend of mine, and it was more about tips for exchange students, basically what Dublin, I don't know if you know Dublin, it's the biggest portal of for Ireland, so it was basically this. So we were explaining how it works to do an exchange program, what they should do and blah blah blah, and then we interviewed a few people, but everything online and everything only audio. And when at some point it gets boring, we got tired talking about the same thing, and then it just finished. And Talita, who did the podcast with me, she moved to Belfast. And after, there was a new wave of podcasts, in Brazil especially. So basically Flow podcast, which is a big one. So they started doing the same as Joe Rogan, and then it started growing, and then there was a big, a new wave, let's say.
Yeah.
And then I said, I could do that, and I really like production, and I like producing content,
Yeah.
I always watch YouTube, and I'm like, I should be there, should be doing this. And I was like, but how can I not make the same mistake, like how can I make it so I don't get bored?
Yeah.
So I said, let's talk about the life stories, of people. And so this was my first thing.
Yeah.
And then I said, I don't want to be about Ireland. Like, I don't want to make it about Ireland. I want to make it a general thing.
Yeah.
But to niche down a little bit, so I said, okay, let's do the story of an immigrant, So the guy comes from Brazil and comes here to Ireland or wherever. And what did he do to get where he, where he is now? So that's why I started with occupations, professions. So let's say I said, oh, there's an engineer here. Like normally Brazilians, they want to come here, they want to, they will be a kitchen porter, they will be a cleaner, they will be a delivery driver. But what if the person wants to be an engineer, So I found a Brazilian engineer here. I said, okay, let's talk, how did you go through, what did you do before, so we go through the whole process of how she achieved this thing.
Yeah.
And then I did this with a lot of professions, like a video maker, I don't know, programmer, developer, whatever. And so why not to be Irish? Because at some point as well, I knew that the stories would blend together.
Yeah.
There will be one guy who came here, he was a cleaner, and then he was a kitchen porter, and then this thing happened with him, and then he became what he is now.
Yeah.
So I put Boulder podcast because I wanted to be like, I was like, oh, this guy is bold enough to come here, and do this.
I like it.
Yeah. And I put Boulder because I want to be even, even bolder. And so that's the story about how it started. And I was like, first, I wanted to know if I would like to do this, And I invited 4 people I kind of knew, I knew one friend, but one person I was a friend, but I didn't have a lot of contact,
Yeah.
And I invited them, and I was like, the first one I said, I don't know why would anyone watch this,
Yeah.
Because this is
That was
horrible.
me for the first 20, I think.
Yeah.
I still ask myself that question.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I was very shy, and it was, for me, it was horrible, but it was like, yeah, maybe I should try again, I should do more. And then, so I did 4 recorded that I didn't know if I would publish, Then I said, okay, I gotta publish this thing, because maybe someone will learn something.
Yeah.
And then it was that, like, so I started publishing, and I got a feedback from people who said, oh, more. First it was like technical, oh, the audio is bad in this part. Oh,
yeah.
The video, you should do that. And then it was like, oh, you jumped straight into the occupation. You should ask more about, how the person was in the beginning of their lives, like what they did as a kid and that kind of things. And then I was like, yeah, that's true, So I started listening to some people, not everyone, but some people, how I could improve. And like I got a bit more confidence.
Yeah.
and I did like a lot pre-recorded because I was like, I live is good, but at the same time you lose a lot of your freedom, you know. Like if you want to record 10 episodes here and take a holiday in Spain, you can. Kind of, you know, because it won't work on itself, but but then if it's live, it's like you gotta prepare, and then you gotta be there at the time, and it's good because of the interaction. But at first I was like, no one's gonna watch this, so who is gonna interact, you know? And I was imagining, you know, I'm live, and then there is no messages here in the live chat, and then I would start feeling uncomfortable, and would be a lot of pressure on me, and I was like, no. So I started like this, recording, and then at the end of last year I was like, I will start doing some live streams. But then I had a few podcasts recorded still, so I did like one live today and then one recorded episode tomorrow, you know. Didn't like doing like that. And now everything's live, unless I have to travel or, you know, I have to do something, and then I would record one or two. But
and are you managing, like, so when it's live, are you interacting with the comments or reading them out at the same time as interviewing someone?
No, first it's like this. So my wife, she's the camera controller.
She deserves a big shout out here. Come on. What's your wife's name?
Carol.
Yeah. Big shout out to Carol.
Shout out. And then she's like, she changes the camera and stuff, and she reads some of the messages, you know. If it's like a super chat, you know, if it's paid, so we kind of read, not at the same time, but, you know, it gets some priority. Because, you know, it helps supporting the channel, you know.
Of course.
And then it's like that, because I can't read. Like at first I was like, you know, after the 1 hour of interview I was like reading, but this I can't be at the same time, you know,
I would not be able to do that.
It has to be, someone has to filter, you know, because like you can't read everything, you know. Like sometimes it's like a crazy question, or
like
but
to catch you out to be like, do you like a liquor? Not a liquor my balls. You know, like they always get you with those.
Sometimes. You know. But so I try not to you know, to say something like that. But it's like, also in the beginning I was like, so this new wave of podcasts, it's like you can talk about everything, right? So there's no script here, so we can talk about, of course you have like a theme about Dublin, but if you want to ask me about whatever else, I would say, you know, whatever I think. But at first I was like, who is gonna watch two anonymous people talking about something that has nothing to do with anything, you know, like if it's too broad, who is gonna watch this? So that's why I was like, okay, it has to have like a thread, you know, like it goes. So it's a story of the immigrant, you know. What can I do to be this guy, or to do the same thing as this person did, you know?
But can I just say one thing from the experience of having a little bit of experience in startup businesses and now something like this, right? Asking yourself that question and having that attitude is extremely important, because if you are an anonymous person, let's say you design t-shirts and you're like, all my t-shirts are amazing, but you can't have that attitude. You have to have the attitude, especially nowadays where everyone is on social media and everyone's online, so you're just literally another grain of sand on a massive beach. You have to have the attitude of, why the hell would anybody bother their time buying this or watching this? And I think unless you're a famous person or coming into it with some kind of, you know, maybe loads of money that you can pay for loads of Google ads or something like that, I think that attitude that you had is probably the main reason for your success.
Yeah, it's because the thing is, people won't watch this thing because of you. They
No.
will watch because it's like, what can I gain from that?
Yeah, the
you
value.
know? Yeah, like that's why I always thought about that, you know, like yeah, like I'm not famous, and I really don't want to be famous, you know, like
Yeah.
it's like what I like to do. It's what I like to see is to make the podcast work, you know, make it like yeah, it's making money. Yes, it's like it's you know, it's getting traction. I like to see the results of what I'm doing, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not because like I want to be famous. No, like even I'm not in the most of the clips when you see on Instagram. I'm not on them.
Yeah.
You know, like I put people there. I like to put stories of people. You know, that's the goal. And so yeah, the podcast started growing. I think because people found value, you know, in watching it, and also because of the clips. So the clips are the important thing, you know.
Easily digestible. They might pop up now and again. That they're easy to interact with, and it's not. You don't have to go through the full podcast to get to the meaty bits. Is that why you think they're popular?
Yeah, definitely. Like, so there was one guy I interviewed. Okay, so maybe I put his name on the title of the video, but I put like something, maybe his profession, you know. But at one point there, he says, "Oh, I was a stripper here," you know. Said I worked as a stripper here for a while, and then I made 500 euros in a night. Then I'm like, of course, this will be a clip, you know. Like, definitely.
This can't not be a clip.
Yeah. And then you put that on Instagram. The person is like, "Oh, I gotta watch this episode," you know, because he's saying about, you know, being a stripper. Like, people are curious about that, you know.
Yeah.
And then, well, clips are maybe the most important thing. Of course, the main podcast is important, but because, of course, it's the whole story there. But then, yeah, you gotta take the
promotional
clips.
part. The promotional part has to be the clips.
Yeah,
that's what
to
gets
grow.
the eyes onto the actual product.
Yeah.
Exactly. Felipe, I would love to keep this going for like another hour, but today we're doing a stack of recordings.
It's okay.
And I'm paranoid that there's someone else coming downstairs, but there's a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you, or we normally ask before we finish. First of all, if you're speaking to someone who's thinking about moving to Ireland, let's avoid accommodation because we know it's such a big and obvious problem. But what other piece of advice would you recommend them?
Bring money.
How
Bring money.
How much money do you think is enough?
Okay, I can talk about the students, right? So it's like the minimum, it's 3,000 euros. So bring 5,000 if you can, you know. No, but the thing is, be prepared, you know. Like, I think moving abroad, it's like starting your own business.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You gotta, you gotta save some money. Yeah, and then you gotta invest in this thing. So you gotta pay for your travel. You gotta pay for your accommodation in the beginning. Yeah, it's like you're investing the money. It's like in a business, and then when you start working, you're more stabilized here. You're more used to everything. When you learn the language, it's basically learning a skill. Then you can start collecting and start getting the fruits from this big move. So you gotta be prepared, and how to be prepared is to bring money. If you, I know that some people made a big living. They went to America and they crossed the border in Mexico and did this illegally, and they are rich now. I know one or two people who might have done that, but most people who try this way, it's a failure. Most people. So if you want to do the things that will work for a long time and do everything the right way, just be more prepared. Just that's the main advice, you know.
Good advice.
And you've been here since 2011. You've seen lots of things, or you've been here on and off since 2011. You've seen lots of things. Where is your favorite space in Dublin? Or in Ireland? It doesn't have to be just Dublin.
Well, now it's my studio that I have to spend maybe 12, 13 hours a day there. But other than that, it's like, I don't know, I go to Deliri loads of times. Maybe it's a bit cliche, you know.
No, it's a nice spot.
I lived in Blackrock for a while, and then I always went there. But Ireland, you know, as a country, it's very beautiful. I have a motorbike, and I traveled a lot here, and like I've been nearly everywhere, but I haven't been to Dingle yet. But anyways, like in Ireland, I would say the Ring of Kerry was one of the best trips I did.
It's spectacular.
And but in Dublin, maybe Deliri, maybe the Phoenix Park.
They're all brilliant places for their own reasons, and I don't know. Some people are from the countryside in Brazil, or some people are from who've never seen snow in their life. You know, they kind of get hooked onto different places in Ireland. So there's so much opportunity for everyone to kind of find their own little private space. But Felipe, thank you so much for giving the time and coming in to see us. We really appreciate it. And do you want to promote yourself, your podcast, or anything like that? Anything else to say before we finish?
Yeah, if you speak Portuguese, just go to Boulder Podcast on YouTube. And
I actually saw the other day you put some English subtitles onto your video.
Did I? Maybe not.
I think it is.
I don't know.
Or maybe it was coming up somehow, because I think
maybe someone did.
Yeah. Anyway, I was able to follow it for the first time. But there you go.
Yeah, like I will do a few English interviews coming up now, and I know one. It's gonna be a famous guy for now, the first one.
Cool.
But
can you tell us, or is that a secret?
I don't want to tell, because if it doesn't work, it's bad.
Okay.
But it's gonna be a good one, I think. And but I plan on doing at least 2 times a month, like an English interview.
Cool.
Yeah. If not, if it doesn't happen this year, it will be in 2023.
2023.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Felipe. Congratulations on becoming an Irish citizen.
Thank you.
Must be very, very proud. We're happy to have you. And,
absolutely.
Thanks so much, Mark, again.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Boom. There we go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was brilliant. I really enjoyed that.
I'm sorry if I said I'm not a very good interview.
You thought you were
brilliant. You're talking away non-stop. That's amazing.